Texas Peet is taking its flavor on the road with convenient, easy to enjoy portion control packets. Whether it's a Texas Pete dip cup or sauce packet, your customers will be able to enjoy bold flavor for a better on the go dining experience. Anywhere, anytime. Ask your broker for the number one portion control hot sauce or visit TexasPeteFoodService.com for more information. All right, guys, so let's talk about cell cultivated meat. Joanna, you wrote a really great feature this week on cell cultivated meat. That is a tongue twister. So let's talk a little bit about it. Can you give our readers a little bit of a summary?
Yeah, sure. So cell cultivated meat, that is the preferred term from scientists. Though there's a little bit of a debate with that. It's either cultured meat or cultivated meat. Basically, it means meat that was grown in a lab through animal cells. And we've been hearing about this technology for almost a decade, I would say. What year to say? We've been hearing about this since about 2014, 2015. And a couple of companies are really ramping up their efforts, and we should be seeing cell cultivated meat on menus and in grocery stores by next year.
So, how is this going to impact the uh, future of things that are, plant-based protein? Let's call it that.
I mean, I don't see why there's any reason why they shouldn't both exist. Why they can't coexist naturally and peacefully. I think that they're very different things, and I think that they will appeal to very different markets. Um, at the same time, though, a lot of plant-based meats like the Beyond and Impossible, a lot of them are appealing to meat eaters, omnivores, because a lot of vegans and vegetarians don't particularly love them. That's what we've heard. But so this would be it would definitely be competition for sure. But yeah, I think that they can definitely coexist.
As somebody who tends to eat on the healthier side, Leigh Anne, what do you think about this new invention? I mean, will you try it?
Yeah, I mean, as a consumer in like any category, I tend to believe the more the merrier. Um, having more options of things to eat, whether you're eating a certain way for health reasons, as I do, or if people are vegan or vegetarian or whatever the case may be, I think having more options can really only be a good thing for the consumers and for the industry.
I'm definitely curious to see what this is going to hold in terms of future stakes. I mean, we've really seen two people hold the market. Joanna, what's so funny?
Future stakes. You made an accidental pun. Sorry, I'm gonna go away now.
Oh, you're so right. Future stakes. That's funny. I wonder what it holds for the future of this industry, because we've really seen some players thrive while other players haven't. We've also seen a lot of people use their own proprietary blends for plant-based proteins. So I'm curious to see how cell cultivated meat will really exist in restaurants, because I don't think restaurants can make it themselves the same way they can with a plant-based protein. So I'd be really curious to see how that's going to unfold in terms of restaurants and their menus.
I think that's what's really interesting is that these companies are working on hybrid products. So hybrid could mean one of two things. It can mean either the cultivated meat mixed with regular, quote unquote, regular meat to cut costs, or it could mean that it's mixed with plant-based proteins. So that'll be pretty interesting. I think that the biggest hurdle, honestly, is the price, and that's what I ended up speaking to Upside Foods and a couple of my other sources about. Because right now because the technology is so new, it's really challenging to make and perfect, and as a result, all of the companies that I spoke to said that right now the meat and seafood will be priced at a premium.
I'm very curious to hear about more about this. I realize you don't have much more, but I'm curious to see how it ends up in the market, the cell cultivated meat mixed with regular meat, because I'm very curious how that would work and how it would be priced. I think that that could be a really interesting option for lowering the cost of meat on the market. But as of now, I realize you said it's a premium, so we won't quite see that yet. But I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, and I think like one of the sources that I spoke to kind of compared it to when any technology comes out. Like remember when electric cars came out and they were only luxury vehicles and nobody could afford them, and now pretty much like most people can afford an electric car. And so it really just takes time for the supply chain to kind of get used to it and the technology to catch up. And so probably you'll start seeing it more as part of the general meat ecosystem. Protein ecosystem in probably like 5 to 10 years. So it takes time, but we'll get there.
All right, so moving on to unions, everyone's favorite topic. No longer about Starbucks unions. We have news about other companies other than Starbucks. So we're talking today about Peet's and Chipotle, two very interesting companies. Peet's is just unionizing, and Chipotle is being accused of union busting. So kind of two opposite ends of the spectrum there. Joanna, you are our union expert, so I'm going to turn it over to you.
So, I mean, I think that this really does still have to do with Starbucks, right? Because I think that Starbucks kind of kicked this into motion. There are, I'm going to get the number wrong, but I think it's like 287 Starbucks unionized at this point. So, really, that momentum of that movement, other companies are trying to emulate it. So, basically, the news that we had is that the first Peet's Coffee unionized in California, and we'll see how Pete's responds. Because I mean, like most of these companies, they clearly weren't thrilled. They said that they had hoped for a different result, but will be following legal protocol. And what's something that's sort of interesting is that they already are saying the employees at this location are already saying that managers are allegedly making their lives more difficult because of this, because they unionized, and Leigh Anne looks thrilled about this. Yeah, I know. So I mean, it's just become like really this bad. I mean, Starbucks obviously has this is the most egregious example of it, probably because they have 287 stores to deal with, which is a lot more difficult than one. Um, and then in other news, this is actually pretty much news today, so it's new to me. So excuse me that I don't have all the details yet. But Chipotle is being accused again of union busting, and uh, and basically that they apparently allegedly lost a union contract at a store, at one of their stores, and this is on the heels of they closed a store that was set to unionize, that was voting to unionize in Augusta, Maine. That was over the summer. So I'm going to be getting more details from Chipotle on that today, so more on that to come.
The whole labor landscape is just so interesting right now because I know we're going to talk about recruiting and all the open jobs that are available in restaurants right now, which is so counter to what we're seeing overall in the economy. I mean, obviously, the tech sector is somewhat in shambles at the moment with all the layoffs going on there. And it's almost like the restaurant industry exists like in a totally different world. But a big part of what's going on these days is that restaurant workers um, are able to get more elsewhere in other industries. And so restaurants are really having to fight for their lives out there to get and retain good workers. And so part of that is, those who are dedicated to the restaurant industry fighting for what they, I would say, deserve as workers in the industry. And then on the flip side, you see companies, including Chipotle, going out there with hiring campaigns and offering new and interesting benefits. So it's really fascinating to watch, especially in the context of the economy as a whole right now.
But yet I kind of feel like the chasm between employees, what employees say that they want, and what employers are kind of trying to dangle the carrot and offer as they try and hire more people. I feel like it's starting to get, it's really getting wider. So we'll see how that plays out. But as for the connection to as for the connection to the tech industry, I mean, I think it's really just honestly, it's just kind of like a simple equation. I think like during the pandemic there was more need for tech related workers, and now there's less need of it, so they say. And now that restaurants are obviously like open and kind of like that post pandemic economy, that more restaurant workers or robots, I guess, are needed.
That was a beautiful segue into our last story. Leigh Anne, you did a wonderful job.
I do what I can.
So we're talking about the fact that Chipotle is hiring 15,000 workers to staff it during its quote busy season, um, while it's opening up more restaurants. But we're also talking about KFC, who's now doing a college tuition program. So I mean, we're seeing restaurants offer more and more benefits amid the unionization. Maybe a way to appease unionization as well. But Chipotle, the main reason why the first Chipotle store unionized was because of a lack of staffing. So, I mean, it's important that Chipotle is out there saying we're going to hire and giving more benefits. But I mean, I think that they have to take it a step further to offer something better to these workers, to dangle the carrot, as Joanna says, in front of them a little bit more. I mean, what do you guys think about these benefits? Do you think that they're going to work? Do you think they're worth it?
I mean, ironically, one of the first restaurant companies to offer college tuition as a benefit to its workers was Starbucks, which I know because the school they work with is Arizona State, go Sun Devils. Um, so I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's appealing to people. It's certainly, I feel like, a great benefit, but it's not going to erase things that might be a challenge for workers. Like, I think workers are deciding that some of these benefits are not worth the understaffing or the low pay or whatever else. So I think that's where we see some of the intersection of those things. It'll be interesting to see it play out at KFC, which I think has a reputation for having a pretty positive work culture. So I'll be interested to watch that. The Chipotle thing is also fascinating because their hiring push is because they are expanding so rapidly. So they've got new stores to fill with workers, and they're, as far as retention, they're touting, their internal promotions, and things like that. So I guess all I can say is, like, we'll have to wait and see.
And I think that if I had to make like a metaphor here, I think that from what I'm seeing from various restaurants that are trying to unionize, it sort of almost seems like these different benefits, whether it's mental health benefits or college tuition, are kind of like the icing on the cake, and it's kind of like these restaurants or these companies are offering dessert, and then they're saying, hey, but we're still starving. We actually haven't had a real meal, nutritious meal, and meaning that, sorry, I took the metaphor a little too far, but meaning that they don't have the basic things, which is enough staffing. They feel like they're stretched too thin, and training and things like flexibility in hours. And just in general better communication with managers, which is what I am seeing as complaints from employees that are trying to unionize way more than benefits.
I mean, I find it really, I realize I say I find it interesting to a lot of things because I find a lot of things interesting here. We work in a really interesting field. But I think that the fact that they're offering this to employees is an interesting move because
I'm gonna buy you a thesaurus.
because we've seen these benefits being offered to employees before. We know that Starbucks has all these benefits, and yet they were being they were the first place to be hit by unionization. So, I mean, I just don't know if these benefits work. I think that they need to really, the main thing is staffing, and Chipotle is not staffing for existing restaurants, really. They're staffing for their new restaurants. And so I think that, let me check my figures here, but I think that the, the Chipotle story that they're planning on opening, they have a 7,000 unit footprint that they're planning in the next several years. I mean, that's a lot of restaurants, especially amid unionization efforts at their stores and being accused of union busting. Um, So they're really only looking to staff those units. They're not looking to fix the problems that they already have, which I find is really fascinating. See, Mr. Newark.
Look at that. I was gonna say, do you perhaps find it intriguing?
I mean, it will be, like I said, just watching it unfold is going to be wild. But on the other hand, like you're right, they're not necessarily addressing all of the problems or like a lot of the problems. But on the other hand, it's like what else? What else can they do? You know, especially with brands that are offering these new benefits. You know, it's what they can do. It's something. Um, and so, yeah, I can't wait to like watch it unfold and see how the whole labor thing kind of shakes out in the next couple of years. Because I think it could end up in a place where like none of us could even imagine it right now.
But then as for Chipotle, what's interesting to me, sorry not to use interesting again, but is that they haven't had more stores unionized. I was kind of surprised at that when they had like a couple of them like vote over the summer, and one store, I believe it's one store, unionized, and same with now Pete's. It sort of seems like they can't get the same momentum going as with Starbucks.
I wonder if that's due to internal pressures. I mean, Pete's we will wait and see because they've just done one, but Chipotle, I wonder if that's due to internal pressures or they're offering new benefits that we're not aware of, or they're doing something to help workers adjust that that's internal and we're just not aware of it. Or I wonder if there's internal pressures from Chipotle not to unionize. All right, well, that kind of ended on a sour note, but we had a great podcast, guys. I'd say that we did a great job.
Always a good time.
Do we want to go around and say on a happy note? We could say our favorite Chipotle order. I don't know. I'm just kidding.
Though I do order the sofritas at Chipotle, which is plant-based protein. So, just saying to bring it back around. Well, anyways, guys, it's been a pleasure talking to you today, and thank you so much.